Lewis Hamilton did not hold back. He didn't try to soften the reality or rely on rehearsed phrases or the usual diplomacy that surrounds major racing teams. As soon as the checkered flag waved in Barcelona, his voice came through the team radio with raw and uncomfortable honesty. "I think there's something wrong with this car, mate. It's in the worst shape ever." That was not a casual remark. It was the outcry of someone who had reached his emotional limit. A 7-time world champion, going through one of the most difficult phases of his career, was now describing the race as the worst I've ever experienced in terms of balance. Racing for the most iconic team in Formula One, Hamilton had nothing to celebrate. What remained was a weekend of silence over the radio, bottled-up frustration, and a quiet sense of regret. But that message, more than a passing frustration, revealed a much bigger problem. It was the tip of an iceberg built up over weeks of emotional strain, strategic errors, and a car that simply refuses to respond to his driving style. And behind every poorly executed lap lies something even more concerning: a growing disconnect between Hamilton and his race engineer, Riccardo Adami. A silent tension brewing behind the scenes now threatens to undermine the rest of Hamilton's debut season with the Maranello squad. Because behind the mystique of the red racing suit and the weight of Ferrari's legacy, the emotional structure is starting to collapse. And what comes next will make it all very clear. In this video, we're going to break down the strategic and emotional breakdown that unfolded during the Spanish Grand Prix. We'll examine in detail why the relationship between Hamilton and Adami seems to be hanging by a thread and how this could affect not only the results, but Hamilton's overall future with the team. This is not just another race debrief. It's an investigation into the most critical moment of Hamilton's journey since choosing to wear red. And more importantly, what might happen if this crisis is not dealt with immediately. So go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because what's at stake here is more than just a championship. It's the fate of the biggest Formula One signing in the last decade, and you won't want to miss a second of it. It all began with something that has been rare for Hamilton this year: hope. The Spanish circuit in Barcelona seemed like the ideal setting for a competitive comeback. The weather conditions, the team's preparation, and the car's behavior during practice sessions all pointed toward a possible breakthrough. Qualifying brought a glimpse of the Hamilton we know: calm, strategic, and precise. He secured 5th place on the grid, ahead of teammate Charles Leclerc, and just behind the 2 McLarens. The start was clean, the first corner was managed smartly, and an overtake on George Russell brought a brief sense of relief. In those first laps, it seemed Ferrari had finally got things right, but that feeling quickly faded. The car that had inspired confidence on Saturday had transformed by Sunday. Right from the first lap, things started to unravel. The balance of the SF25 disappeared, the rear end became unstable and unpredictable, and the grip he needed simply wasn't there. Hamilton was constantly adjusting, trying to keep control of the car. What had been promising became a struggle. Every turn was a trap. Every acceleration required extreme caution. Instead of fighting for position, Hamilton found himself wrestling to control a machine that refused to obey. Then came an all-too-familiar moment. Leclerc, with more pace, closed in quickly. The team didn't hesitate. The order was direct: switch positions. Hamilton didn't argue, didn't question it, simply moved aside. But that silence, that lack of any reaction, said more than words ever could. It was a driver who had clearly lost trust in those meant to support him. When a competitor like Lewis, known for his combative spirit, quietly complies with orders, something has clearly broken. And the situation got even worse. Midway through the race, another issue appeared: gear shifting problems, possibly in the gearbox. Hamilton reported it on the radio, asking for immediate attention. The engineer's response was hesitant. Riccardo Adami asked him to test the downshift again. Hamilton shot back: "I just told you it's working." Later, when he was told to box, he refused. "I can launch, mate. It's fine." That wasn't a discussion. It was a clear message. The driver no longer believes the pit wall has control. This behavior isn't isolated. It's part of a growing pattern that can no longer be ignored. Since his arrival at Ferrari, Hamilton's relationship with Adami has been distant and riddled with miscommunication. The synergy he had for years with Peter Bonington at Mercedes seems like a thing of the past. It's not just a matter of adjustment. It's as if they're operating on completely different wavelengths. We've seen the cracks before. In Miami, when the team hesitated to ask Leclerc to let him through, Hamilton quipped sarcastically, "Have a cup of tea while you wait." It sounded like a joke, but it was loaded with frustration. In Monaco, after finishing 5th, he asked on the radio, "Are you upset with me or something?" And there was no reply. Ferrari later blamed radio issues. Hamilton defended Adami publicly, but few believed the official version, because body language doesn't lie. Silence doesn't lie. When a driver asks if his engineer is mad at him, he's not asking about strategy. He's expressing the breakdown of a fundamental connection, and this kind of fracture can't be fixed with data sheets or simulations. It requires a rebuilding of trust. If this unraveling situation has caught your attention, hit the like button, subscribe, and activate notifications, because what happens at the Canadian Grand Prix might be the last chance to save this project, or the moment everything falls apart for good. Back to what happened in Barcelona, the outcome was painful. There were no dramatic crashes, no glaring mechanical failures, and no massive strategic blunders. Just a slow, steady erosion of a weekend that began with promise and ended with resignation. Hamilton finished 7th on the track, bumped up to 6th after Max Verstappen received a penalty. But his post-race expression told the real story. When asked about the positives from the race, he said, "The worst race I've ever experienced in terms of balance. I have no idea why it was so bad. 0. And when asked about what comes next, he didn't mention Canada, the simulator, or the team. He said one word, home. A short word, but one that carried enormous emotional weight. That wasn't just physical exhaustion, it was emotional detachment. The portrait of a driver who, at this point, appears disconnected from the project he once embraced. And that's dangerous, because without emotion, without involvement, not even the best updates in the world can save a season. Ferrari has already promised aerodynamic changes, structural tweaks to the rear of the car, and improved stability. On paper, it all looks great. But what good are upgrades if the driver no longer feels his voice is being heard? You can improve aerodynamics, you can swap parts, you can cut tenths off lap times. But none of it matters if the driver feels like he's fighting alone. And worse, if he feels like no one is listening. Hamilton didn't join Ferrari for this. He left Mercedes in search of a new legacy, of something greater, of an epic finale to his career. What he's getting so far is a poorly managed script. And it's not just about results, it's about tone, about facial expressions, about the words left unsaid. Because when someone like Lewis Hamilton stops speaking up, stops reacting, stops believing, it means something is deeply, deeply wrong. If you feel the same, if you sense that something is breaking inside Ferrari, leave a comment below. Tell us what you think of Hamilton's current phase. Do you believe the team is at risk of losing him emotionally before the season even reaches its halfway point? And now, let's look ahead. Will Hamilton demand fundamental changes within the team? Will Ferrari's leadership intervene before things collapse completely? Or are we already witnessing, week after week, the slow dismantling of a dream that perhaps was never ready to become reality? Let us know in the comments if you believe there's still time to turn things around, if Ferrari can rebuild the trust of their star driver, or if they've already lost the most valuable thing a team can give its driver: trust. And if you've stayed with us until the end, thank you very much. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because what happens in Montreal could be the most defining moment of this entire saga. And you definitely won't want to miss it.